Hi everyone, Bernard here. I hope you're all staying safe and well, and welcome to the Citizen channel as we have another little History Boys feature today. This has been recorded in May 2021 and it's a look back at some history between ourselves at home against Chelsea. So we're going to have a look at City versus Chelsea today, so join me as we look back at some previous encounters and some personal memories, as well as some stuff taken from other sources, of course. So please join me for this History Boys special on City versus Chelsea. Please, if you're new to the channel, push that subscribe button, push the bell notifications if you enjoy these. I try and inform and entertain as we go through. I do City Past, City Present, City Quizzes, City Book Clubs, loads of different things on City. So, and if any of your fellow City friends are interested, please point them in my direction. If they don't know about me, I'd be very, very grateful. And you'll see some stuff on my film and TV channel as well. I also do stuff on film and TV reviews and information vlogs. So if that's of any interest, or you know anyone who might be interested, please point them in my direction as well. That'd be fantastic. Anyway, please, we're talking about football today. So I post loads of stuff on Facebook and Twitter as well. So if you're after any followers or friends on there, check the links on screen, and I do check every 2 or 3 days and follow and friend everyone back on there as well. So all comments are very welcome. Any memories you've got of these is obviously one game I'm talking about that might be familiar to a lot of you, and obviously, well, a couple of games. I mean, it's a fairly new one as well. But any comments on City versus Chelsea or anything to do with City, just leave us a comment. And if you can't leave us a comment today, just give us a thumbs up. It's nice to get views, but it's nice to get thumbs up as well. Right, the History Boys. Yeah, well, overall, up to and including the end of the 2019-2020 season, we've actually played at home against Chelsea 75 times. We won 35, drawn 17 and lost 23, so not bad. I think overall they have a slightly better record against us, by about 10 wins more, I think, or something like that. So we need to remedy that, don't we? Goals scored 112 on 75 games, not a massive amount, obviously, and goals against 84. So the biggest wins, yeah, I mean, we don't have to go far back, do we? I think that's the programme there for 10th of February 2019. We don't have to go far back to that. I was there. I think most of you watching this, if you're probably there or watched the game live in some way. Yeah, so 54,452 of us saw us take a 4-0 lead by half-time and absolutely tated them, didn't we? Let's be honest about it. It was a 6-0 victory. The Aguero hat-trick, including a penalty. There you go. That was a rare sight. Sterling got a couple, and of course Gundogan got the other one. Of course, this was a sort of warm-up as well, wasn't it? We were actually going to play them in the Carabao Cup a couple of weeks later. So it was a warm-up for that. We didn't quite reproduce that scoreline, obviously, in the Carabao Cup. But, yeah, Chelsea certainly made a better fist of the Carabao Cup final, didn't they? But quite humiliating, wasn't it? I mean, I think we did the old one step beyond after the game, etc., etc. So that was fairly newish. I mean, but previous to that 6-0, we'd actually scored 6 goals back in 1978. I was there at that one. But it was they managed to score a couple of goals in reply, so we actually won that one 6-2. We were under, of course, manager Tony Buck at the time. The crowds were averaging just over 40,000 that season, and it was only United and Liverpool had better average crowds than us. Where were we when we weren't very good? No history City though, have we? That's the thing. We found ourselves lying 7th after 16 games, just 1 point behind Liverpool at the time, but we were 6 points behind the leaders, who were Nottingham Forest. Chelsea were down in 16th, just below United in 15th, but there was actually only 4 points covering City in 7th to Chelsea in 16th, so it's quite a tight league underneath sort of Forest and company. It was played on the 26th of November 1977. Not a bad crowd, 34,345. Our scorers that day, Graham Wilkins scored an own goal for us. That was Mr. Ray Wilkins' brother, who actually did play for Chelsea as well that day. He scored an own goal. Stewart got a hat-trick, a fantastic Stewart hat-trick. Shannon and Barnes, I think Barnes, we'll talk about Barnes in a moment. Chelsea scorers that day were Britton with a penalty. And, of course, as mentioned before, Ray Butch Wilkins, who scored for Chelsea as well. The City team that day, Corrigan, Clements, Donaghy, Doyle, Watson, Power, Barnes, Shannon, Kidd, Hartford, Chewett, and the sub was Mr. Jed Keegan. For Chelsea, you had Benetti the Cat. There we go. Benetti the Cat in goal. Graham Wilkins, Sparrow, Britton, Droy, Wicks, Alott, Ray Wilkins, Langley, Swain, and Cook. And the U substitution was a guy called Lewington. I sort of half remember him. Despite the Chewett hat-trick, it was actually Peter Barnes. And we got back to Peter Barnes. He was the man of the match. He scored a goal, but it was just his general overall play. And many said it was a 10 out of 10 performance. Some of the headlines, a couple of headlines in the papers that were reprinted in a City magazine, City programme shortly after the game. The Sunday Mirror said a Barnes dancer. The Sunday People declared it's a Barnes storm. And the News of the World and Barnes gives a wonder show. So he came out as the man of the match in that game, despite Chewett's hat-trick, which takes some doing really, doesn't it? Chelsea would actually finish 16th that season and City 5th. So there you go. Not much change to actually when the game took place, but that was our previously to the 6-0. That was our other biggest win, 6-2, of course. Our biggest defeat, well, we have to go back in time, and yes, I wasn't around at this time. I wasn't around the 1932-33 season before you say I was. I know what you lot are like, but it came in, the biggest defeat came at home, came in that season, and we'd actually reached the FA Cup final that season as well, don't forget. Sadly, we didn't win it, but that was the 1932-33 season. We sort of finished 16th in the league, so despite a good FA Cup run, we didn't do so well in the league, but Chelsea were actually below us in 18th, and but it didn't stop them putting 4 past us. They hammered us 4-1 at Main Road, and it was the penultimate game of the season, the 1932-33 season, in front of just 14,827 fans. It wasn't the lowest crowd that season, but there's just 14,827. The crowds were dwindling just a little bit despite the FA Cup run. And that was on May the 3rd we played that game, and it was just literally 4 days after we'd lost that mentioned FA Cup final against Everton. We lost 3-0 to Everton just the Saturday before. This was a midweek game, and obviously neither the team nor the fans had sort of really recovered from that disappointment. And the actual team that started the game was the team for the cup final as well, so it's the same 11 players who've been a bit upset. But anyway, obviously the team that started against Chelsea that day in the league that we got beat 4-1 was Langford, Can, Dale, Busby, Cowans, Brake, Tosland, Marshall, Hurd, McMullen and Brooks. So there you go. There's no rest for the wicked, was there, in that time? You have the disappointment of getting well beaten 3-0 in an FA Cup final, and sadly you have to turn up at home and obviously get slashed and slaughtered by Chelsea in your penultimate game. I think we lost the last game of the season as well, so it didn't go too well, unfortunately. Delving back into my little personal memories, my little scrapbooks that I did for a few years in the early 90s. The game that sort of took my eye was the 28th of March 1992. Not particularly for the scoreline. It was a disappointing 0-0 draw, and there's some match highlights on YouTube that show about 40 seconds, which sort of tells you all about the game, really. But it was the 4th game on the bounce that City had actually failed to score, and this had actually seriously damaged all our ambitions of European football. Of course, we're doing quite well that season under Peter Reid, but this has obviously knocked it back. We'd been as high as 3rd at one stage and looked not shoo-ins, but we looked as though we were going for Europe. And then all of a sudden we had this little bad run, and this was part of that bad run where we just couldn't score a goal. But what was more of interest in this game to me was, of course, it was Steve Redmond's last game for City. It was his final game in a City shirt before his move to Oldham in the summer of '92. Of course, Steve Redmond, he doesn't get much of a mention when I've looked through the headlines and stuff, but he actually played 283 games for us, and he played 4 as substitute as well, and scored 7 goals between 1985 and 1991. So that sort of stood out that day. The teams, for your information, City were still in 6 at the start of this game. Colton, Hill, Poynton, Brightwell, Vonk, Redmond, White, Sherron, Brennan, Simpson and McMahon. I think McMahon was generally thought as being the man of the match in this one. And subs was Mr. Clark, came on the 85th minute, and Peter Reid didn't use himself. He was unused that day. Chelsea, they were sort of in mid-table, playing in their garish red diamond number. There's a couple of pictures that are going to pop up later when I do the match report. wasn't the greatest kit, I don't think. I mean, you might like it. I thought it was pretty awful. Their team was Besant in goal, Clark, Myers, Jones, Johnson, Moncau, Lasso, Burley, Stewart, Cascarino, Wise, and the subs were Dixon unused and Barnard unused. The manager that day for Chelsea, Ian Porterfield. Remember Ian Porterfield? He was their manager. Not the biggest crowd. I don't think there was many Chelsea fans there looking at the thing. There's a few in the Platt Lane, but not that many. 23,633. But that season we actually averaged just over 28,000. We had the 5th highest average crowd in the league. So not too bad, was it? Even though that was a bit of a disappointing crowd. But then again, crowds weren't overly massive for most clubs in those days. And to finish off this little thing, I'll show you some images on the game as well as I'm going through this. But I'll just read from Paul Hince's report for the Manchester Evening News the following day about the game. So my thanks to Paul and the Evening News, and say there will be some images on screen just taken from my little scrapbooks of various newspapers, etc. as I'm doing this, just to finish off today. Paul Hince says it will need a miracle now for Manchester City to qualify for a place in Europe next season. Frankly, the Blues will have no one to blame but themselves if they are on the outside looking in when the European prizes are dished out in May. City boss Peter Reid must be tired of handing down the same message to his players. Teams who squander chances win nothing. At Forest last week, the slap-happy Blues created and wasted enough chances to have stitched up the game by half-time. And Reid's men were even more careless against Chelsea. A side with no ambitions, at Main Road on Saturday, where the Blues put together a maddening mixture of top-quality approach play and sort of woeful finishing you wouldn't expect from a Parks team on a Sunday. David White, more than anyone perhaps, epitomised the Jekyll and Hyde streak which has etched itself into Main Road makeup in the recent weeks. On 4 occasions, City's England hopeful used his pace to take him clear of Chelsea's leaden-legged defenders and into clear scoring positions. Just once could White get his aim right, and then he succeeded only in driving his shot against the legs of Besant. Oh well, at least White is getting there to miss him. Yeah, well, we have that problem with certain players now as I'm recording this. Mind you, as damaging as the result was to City's European ambitions, there was a lot to be admired in a much improved display from the Main Road boys. The new midfield combination of Fitzroy Simpson, Steve McMahon and Ian Brightwell worked to treat, with the Blues winning the battle of the engine rooms hands down. McMahon in particular was outstanding. He patrolled his patch like a hungry Rottweiler, driving Vinnie Jones so far back that Chelsea's notorious hard man scarcely set foot in City's half from the start to the finish. Brightwell switched back to the right side of midfield, give another non-stop display, while newcomer Simpson is already looking a bargain buy following his $500,000 transfer from Swindon Town recently. In fact, the watching Reid must have mixed feelings about the display of his midfield men, because on this showing the Blues player boss might find it hard to force his way back into the lineup. Up front, White, despite his wayward finishing, was always a handful, while the ever-improving Mike Sherrin twice brought the best out of Besant, with 2 thunderous strides, one with either foot. City had an early scare when a scorcher from Graham Lasso almost dislodged the bar, but from then on, keeper Tony Colton could have watched the match from a seat in the stand as City's back four expertly strangled the life out of the Chelsea attack. Big Dutchman Michel Vonk pitched in for his full debut against the menacing Tony Cascarino, hardly put a foot wrong, and on this display the powerful young centre-back is going to be a snip when the Blues finalise his $500,000 move from SPURS Dordrecht during the summer. But while Peter Reid was delighted that his side had managed to keep a clean sheet for the first time in 6 attempts, he knows only too well that defences only save matches, it's the forwards who win them. And after 4 games without a single goal, the message is clear. A team whose strikers are already on strike won't be enjoying themselves in Europe next season. Well, yeah, we didn't, did we? We didn't go on, thanks to Paul Hince. We didn't go on to get into Europe, unfortunately. We did actually... go on to, I think we finished 5th that season, if I remember correctly, my mind, but obviously we didn't hit the heights of Europe, unfortunately. The form guide for the players that day, just a matter of interest before we finish this little History Boys feature. Colton got 7, Hill 7, Poynton 7, this is from Mr. Hince, of course. Brightwell 8, Vonk 8, to say that was his debut, interesting. Redmond 7, White 7, Sherrin 7, Brennan 6, Simpson 7, and McMahon 9, and Subclark got a 6 just for coming on for about 3 or 4 minutes. So I always thought Paul Hinch was very kind with his scores. I think that sort of proved it there, didn't it? But interesting to say, not the greatest of game, but perhaps remembered more for sort of Mr. Bonk's debut by all accounts, and of course the final game for Manchester City of the let's call him a mini legend, the City mini legend of Mr. Steve Redmond. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that little history feature. Please, any memories you got of these games, etc., please let me know. I hope you enjoy those little clippings of the newspapers there, and the fact that Mr. Brightwell got away with giving Vinnie Jones a punch. I don't think many guys did that over the years, did they? But there you go. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that. Please, whatever you're going to do the rest of the day, have a great one. Look after yourselves, look after your friends, look after your families. More importantly, let's all look after each other. Till we meet here again on the Citizen channel, or perhaps have a flit across, have a look at my film and TV channel. All I say is, and all I always will say to you is, please stay safe, Blues. Come on, City. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.